find a way out of this. Let's talk to William Clouston from the SDP, the Social Democratic Party, the one party which has come out and basically said, this is not right. We're not doing it right. There must be a better way. William, a very good morning to you. Welcome.
Yeah, great to be back.
Thanks very much indeed for joining us. You do seem to be one of the sole voices of reason on this, William, particularly when it comes to political kind of leadership and political parties. What do you think they're doing wrong, and what do you think they could be doing better?
What they're doing wrong is they're focusing on an attempt to squash the pandemic, to tackle the virus, and they're ignoring all the other consequences of their policies. So it's like taking into account only one category of mortality, which is what they're doing, proximate deaths from COVID, and forgetting about the huge potential damage from all other categories. I mean, we're talking 30 or 40 different categories of human misery.
Yeah.
Carol Secura has made the point about delayed treatments to cancer victims. You've got people with heart difficulties aren't turning up at hospital to get treated. Children aren't being educated. But the thing that I really worry about, Mike, the thing that I think they're not taking into account is that the economy is an extremely complex system. And you can't just switch it off and then switch it back on. It doesn't work like that. What they're doing is dismantling economic capacity through what we call a stop-go policy. They think they can say, right, go ahead, open up, and then suddenly stop. And it's resulted in a very contradictory set of policies. On the one hand, you've got the government actively persuading people to go back to restaurants and pubs and actually financially inducing them to do so. And I think since July, when the pubs and restaurants were reopened, you've had something like 500 million visits.
Yeah.
Pubs, which is fine. We need to get these industries back. And then all of a sudden in the Northeast, they're threatening curfews and other restrictions. And we've got 90,000 students going to come back anytime soon.
Yeah.
So best of luck trying to police that.
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, surely if you're going to make that decision to do the help out to eat out or eat out to help out scheme, you stick with that policy, don't you, rather than jumping backwards again once you find out that, oh, my goodness me, because I mean, surely they should have expected that if people are going to go out and socialise a little bit more, they're going to be sitting in restaurants, albeit maybe socially distanced, maybe not. There's likely to be an increase in infections. So they should have expected it, shouldn't they?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, just think of the figures, Mike. 500 million people, half a billion visits to pubs and restaurants. You will have some effect. But I think the Swedes are going to be proved right in this pandemic. What they've done is kept their society as open as it can be. People, schools are open. They haven't had a full lockdown ever. And they've tried to treat it sustainably, basically. So if you take that attitude, what you do is you get a set of clear health advice. You get clear health advice, basically shield the elderly, build up your medical capacity, which I think has been done now. And remember that the original lockdown was hung on the peg. It was justified because we didn't have capacity. Well, there's no question that the NHS has capacity now. And so what you've got to do is prioritize the basics, get some clear messaging across, shield the elderly, practice social distancing. But you can't have this approach where you have uncertainty and blight hanging over businesses that at any stage could be closed down. What they don't realize is when shutters go down on shops and restaurants and pubs, quite often they won't reopen. And that's the real risk. I think that's what they're forgetting.
Well, that is what they're forgetting. And also, every time they announce that there's a problem, people become more cautious. And so people then say, instead of going out and doing what they thought they'd do this weekend, they decide, actually, you know what, we're not going to do it because we're not sure whether it's safe. So they're kind of sending a mixed message on that as well, rather than they won't tell us what a lot of scientists are telling us, which is that the disease seems to be less strong and less virulent than it was, that it's infecting as many people as it did, but it doesn't seem to be affecting them in such a bad way. And so not so many people are going into hospital, but nobody's absolutely certain because they won't say that.
No, I mean, the theory behind it's very important. I think there was a great piece in the Standard the other day by Freddie Sayers, who analysed the Swedish example. And he makes the point that, in fact, lockdowns, I mean, Sage made the point that lockdowns delay mortality rather than prevent it. If a pandemic if the virus is endemic, if it's out there. So lockdowns may actually basically be extending rather than solving the crisis. And as I say, I mean, globally, I think I'm very, very concerned. All of the previous economic crises we've had, certainly in the last 30 years, you had the Latin American debt crisis, but it was only Latin America. And then you had the Asian debt crisis, but it was only Asia. Even the GFC in 2008 really was centered around 11 economies, and China kept the whole global economy going. What we've got now is literally all engines down. And I was chatting to Rod Little about this. Rod's always been quite a sort of lockdown. He's been in favor of lockdown, been very cautious approach. And actually, as a party, we did not, pretty much didn't criticize the government in the first couple of months, because it was seen as a sort of national emergency where we should all rally round. But the time comes when you've got to speak up on what you think is a mistake. And I think what they're not thinking about is this potential global depression which we're headed to if they're not careful. And I said to Rod, look, yes, you've got 65% of the public in some surveys support the government's approach, but the price hasn't been paid yet. I mean, there's been large prices paid, but what's the view in next Easter if we've got unemployment at 10% and the world economy is being just destroyed? So in a way, the bill hasn't come in yet. The government, as I say, they're only looking at one side of the tennis net. They're not looking at many, many other categories of mortality and pain.
Well, this is it. And I don't think we'll have to wait till next Easter. I think come the end of the furlough for a lot of people at the end of October, that will be the first kind of, major milestone, if you like, which is why I believe there seems to be more people out and about on the streets. I mean, parts of London now are beginning to look almost normal. I know that the trains are still not quite as busy as they were, but I was on a bus yesterday, which was certainly as busy as it used to be. And I think people will be eventually forced back into the working sort of scenario because simply the free money's not there anymore.
Yeah, the free money thing, Mike, is a sort of phony war. And they know it. They know it in the Treasury. They can't maintain that level of fiscal support indefinitely. So it's a bit like, I support the basic approach the government's taken. You've got to keep things going, but you will not keep things going if you don't have a sustainable approach. And stop-go is about pretty much the worst approach you could have. Apart from anything, Mike, it confuses the public. At any one time, if you ask even some local policymakers, you say, okay, what's the particular rule now? And they don't know. And it's partly because the government change it on a daily basis. I mean, that is no way to go. It's no way to run things. And as I say, I'm very concerned about the bigger set of costs elsewhere.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. Because in the end, most of the businesses which have kind of limped back into life, particularly in the hospitality sector, are literally hanging on for grim life, and if they have to sort of see another falling off of business, I'm not sure many of them will actually make it through.
So small businesses are so vulnerable to bankruptcy and insolvency. Literally, what people have got to understand is, in a small business, if you reduce turnover, most small businesses only make profits of 5 to 10%. If you reduce turnover by 20, 30, 40%, and sometimes it's been more, literally you're insolvent. You will really, really struggle. And as I say, the shutters will go down, the tax base will be decimated. I mean, I was in London earlier this week for the second time since March. Yeah. It's true that the inner suburbs, some of those are reasonably lively, but the city is still a ghost town. And I can't see, unless there's greater commitment from the government on getting people back to work and encouraging things to start up again. Literally, I think by early next year, there are some chickens going to come home to roost, and that's the real price that you get from the stop-go policy.
Exactly right. And as far as your kind of arrival at this new policy of your own as the SDP, saying that this is not the right strategy, I mean, what can you do with that? I mean, obviously you're a small party, you don't have a great deal of representation. However, I think you sort of punch above your weight. We like to get you on from time to time because you speak a lot of sense, and we're quite in favour of what it is that you say. But can you cut through anywhere, though?
I think we are a small party, but I think in the battle of ideas, we're much stronger than our size.
Yeah.
And I think we do influence people. I mean, what we publish on SDP Talk and the interesting articles and advice we give, I think is sound. And I think people are crying out for something different. I mean, the whole point, the whole reason the SDP is resurgent is that you look across the landscape now and voters go into polling booths and have just a rotten choice, and they won't get a decent choice, a sensible sort of patriotic middle of the road party to vote for unless you build it. So we're just going to continue doing that. But Mike, I think you'd be surprised. We have a reasonable following even in the government, actually.
Yes. No, listen, I'm not suggesting you wouldn't have. I'm just asking what you can do to influence them, really, because I think that's what a lot of people who listen to my show and watch my show would like to see, because a lot of them will be in full agreement with you, because we do have a split in the country of those people, many of whom are still in the teaching profession, I'm sad to say, who think that it's too dangerous to go out. I would say some of them using it as an excuse not to go back to work because they don't have to. And those of us who really are worried about the fact that the economy needs to be given a massive boost by us.
It does, but I think what I would say, the message I would say, is that Johnson needs to be more confident, probably in his own instincts.
Yeah.
I think look, Mike, the national lockdown was a one-off, must be a one-off. People won't accept that again. And actually, I think you'd get to the stage where people wouldn't observe it. What they need to do is to stop the flim-flam and the stop-go, get a sustainable, give people confidence that if you shield vulnerable people and you practice social distancing everywhere you can, and you get the basics right, like washing your hands and be considerate, then if those things are in place, you've got to keep things going. Because the cost, as I say, I'm repeating myself, but the cost of not doing so, they're not figuring properly. They're not. And
also, you look at the individual kind of sort of decision making, like the rule of 6, like a 10 p.m. curfew. What's it for? I don't get it. And I know that, there are people who say, well, of course, it's very straightforward. It means no more than 6 people. You have to go home by 10 o'clock. Yeah, but that doesn't work, does it?
Mike, it isn't straightforward now, is it? Because the Justice Secretary says report your neighbours, which is pretty. I mean, you mentioned that film, The Lives of Others, the other day. Wonderful film, and should not become a snitching, society.
No,
this is wrong. And we're not. We have a series of embedded rights in this country, which people can't give up, and it can't be given up in a pandemic. And this idea that you have to snitch. But in any case, that they can't even get that right, Mike, because then the Prime Minister says, well, you won't snitch unless you've got sort of an Animal House type party going on. But we don't know. I mean, how on earth can people that they need to just the simple messages, get the simple messages right, reopen the economy, and for heaven's sake, let's get this economy moving again.
Yeah, absolutely. William, thank you very much indeed for joining us. William Clouston there, leader of the Social Democratic Party. And listen, by all means, look into what it is that party stands for. Look into what it is talk about, because there is no question in my mind a need for some other kind of political party that can offer some kind of different approach to different ways of doing politics, because the Labour Party, let's face it, is a busted flush. Run by a guy called Sir Keir Starmer, who has been in self-isolation for the last few days. Apparently he's going to come out of it today. Whoop-de-doo. I can't wait to see what he's got to say for himself. Angela Rayner, who I thought was going to be a bit of a firebrand yesterday, turned out to be a bit of a damp squib, as it was. And, if you don't like what the Tories are now doing to the Tory party, where are you supposed to go? And maybe the SDP could produce the answer to that. Certainly when it comes to lockdown policy and when it comes to the way that we should be getting out of this pandemic problem, do you know what? They've got a better idea than this government has.